The Great Hall of the Galactic Council stretched out like a massive dome under the artificial stars. Hundreds of alien beings filled the curved seats that rose up from the center floor. Their strange voices echoed off the crystal walls as they spoke in dozens of different languages. Some had scales that shimmered green and blue. Others had shells that clicked when they moved. A few looked almost like giant insects with multiple eyes that never blinked. Captain Ji-won Kim stood alone, in the center of it all. His human form looked small and fragile compared to the huge creatures around him. His dark hair was messy from the long journey through space. His uniform was clean but wrinkled. Most importantly, tears were running down his face. He had been standing there for 20 minutes trying to explain what had happened to his people. His voice cracked as he spoke about New Busan, the human colony that had been his home for 15 years. 3 weeks ago, it had been a peaceful place where families lived and children played in the streets. Now it was nothing but burned buildings and empty roads. "Please," Ji-won said, his voice barely loud enough for everyone to hear. "We need help. The Catherine Empire attacked without warning. They destroyed our cities. They killed millions of innocent people. Women, children, elderly, people who never hurt anyone." A low hissing sound came from the section where the Vorthak delegation sat. These reptilian beings had long necks and yellow eyes that glowed in the dim light. Their leader, Ambassador Slicks, stood up slowly. His forked tongue flicked out as he spoke. "Look at this pathetic display," Slick said, his voice carrying clearly through the hall. "The human leaks water from his eyes like a broken machine. How disgusting." Laughter rippled through several sections of the council. The Quillen representatives, who looked like giant praying mantises, rubbed their front legs together in what passed for amusement among their kind. Their delegate, Zeet, clicked his mandibles in rhythm. "In all my years of council service," Zeet added, "I have never seen such weakness. How did creatures this soft ever manage to leave their homeworld?" More laughter filled the air. Ji-won wiped, his eyes with the back of his hand, but fresh tears kept coming. He thought about his sister Minji, who had been visiting New Busan with her 2 young children. He thought about his friend Dongwoo, who ran a small restaurant in the main district. He thought about the thousands of faces he would never see again. "They were innocent people," Ji-won repeated, his voice stronger now despite the tears. "They had done nothing wrong. The Kethrins came in the night. They used plasma bombs on the residential areas first. Children were sleeping in their beds when the fire came." A massive creature with gray skin and tusks like an elephant stood up from the Morganti section. "War is war, human. The strong survive. The weak become food for scavengers. This is the way of the universe." "But there are laws," Ji-won protested. "The Galactic Accords say that civilian populations must be protected. There are rules about targeting non-military areas." "Rules are for those strong enough to enforce them," the Morganti delegate replied. "Your species has been in space for what, 200 years? You are infants playing with fire. Perhaps this lesson will teach you to stay closer to home." In the upper gallery, 3 humans watched the proceedings with growing anger. Dr. Minho Park gripped the rail so hard his knuckles had turned white. He was a tall man with gray hair and kind eyes that now burned with fury. Next to him sat researcher Hana Lee, a young woman who had spent years studying alien cultures. She was taking notes on a small device, recording every insult and every laugh. The third human was Dr. Yuniseo, Earth's military advisor to the diplomatic mission. She had served in 3 different wars before joining the space program. Her face showed no emotion, but her eyes were calculating. She was already thinking about what would come next. "This is worse than we expected," Minho whispered to his companions. "They're not just refusing to help. They're enjoying this." Down on the council floor, more delegates were standing up to speak. Each one seemed eager to add their own insults to the pile. A creature that looked like a walking flower with thorns for arms waved its petals dismissively. "Humans cry too much," it said in a voice like rustling leaves. "On my world, we remove such weakness before it can spread. Perhaps we should offer to help Earth with this problem." The laughter grew louder. Some delegates were now making mock crying sounds, imitating the tears that continued to flow down Jiwan's face. A few began to mimic human gestures, pretending to wipe their eyes while making exaggerated sobbing noises. Jiwan stood straighter, though his tears did not stop. "Crying does not make us weak," he said. "It makes us human. We cry because we care about each other. We cry because life has value. If that is weakness to you, then I am proud to be weak." This only brought more laughter. Ambassador Slicks rose again, his yellow eyes gleaming with cruel amusement. "Proud to be weak," he repeated slowly. "How perfectly human. You leak fluids when you are sad. You leak fluids when you are happy. You even leak fluids when you are angry. Are you anything more than bags of salt water that walk around making noise?" "At least we feel something," Jiwan shot back. "At least we know what it means to love and lose. What do you know about caring for others?" "I know that caring is a luxury for those who can afford it," Slicks replied. "The universe is cold and dark and full of dangers. Those who waste energy on emotions get eaten by those who do not." The formal vote came 30 minutes later. Of the ideal 215 council members present, only 12 voted to provide aid to Earth. Most of the others voted against the proposal. The rest abstained, which in council rules counted as a no vote. As the results were announced, Jiwan's legs gave out. He fell to his knees on the smooth floor, his head in his hands. The tears came harder now, not just for the people of New Busan, but for all of humanity. They were alone in a galaxy full of predators who saw kindness as dinner invitation. In the gallery, Dr. Minho Park stood up. He had made a decision that would change everything. "Come with me," he said to Hana and Yuna. "It's time Captain Kim learned the truth about Earth." "What truth?" Hana asked. Minho's eyes were hard as stone. "The truth about what happens when you make Earth's children cry." The transport ship cut through Earth's atmosphere like a silver needle. Captain Jiwan Kim pressed his face against the small window, watching the blue and green world grow larger below them. After the humiliation at the Galactic Council, seeing his home planet felt like medicine for his wounded soul. Dr. Minho Park sat across from him, reading reports on a tablet device. Next to Minho, researcher Hana Lee was reviewing video files from their time on the council station. Her young face was still angry about how the aliens had treated them. "Where exactly are we going?" Jiwan asked, as the ship began its descent toward the Korean mountains. "Somewhere that most humans have never seen," Minho replied without looking up. "Somewhere that might change how you think about our species." The ship landed on a platform hidden deep in a mountain valley. Ancient pine trees covered the steep slopes around them. The air smelled clean and fresh after the recycled atmosphere of space stations. Jiwan breathed deeply, feeling some of his sadness lift just from being home. A man in a white lab coat was waiting for them at the landing pad. He was younger than Minho, with serious eyes and careful movements. He bowed slightly as they approached. "Captain Kim, welcome to Facility 7, the man said. "I am Dr. In-Ho Choi, the director here. Dr. Park has told me about your situation." "What kind of facility is this?" Jiwan asked, looking around at the buildings that seemed to blend into the mountainside. "The kind that officially does not exist," In-Ho replied. "Follow me, please. What you are about to see must never be discussed with anyone outside this group." They walked through a series of doors that required different security checks. Hand scanners, eye scanners, even devices that seemed to read their DNA. Finally, they emerged into a massive dome made of transparent material. Jiwan stopped walking and stared. Inside the dome was a forest that should not exist. The trees were enormous, their trunks wider than houses. Streams of clear water flowed between moss-covered rocks, and moving through this artificial wilderness were the most beautiful and terrifying creatures Jiwan had ever seen. White tigers padded silently between the trees. Their fur was pure white, without a single dark stripe. Their eyes were the deepest blue, like looking into ocean depths. But these were not normal tigers. They were huge, some as large as small cars. Their movements showed intelligence far beyond what any animal should possess. "My God," Jiwan whispered. Near a stream, a pride of white lions rested in the artificial sunlight. The males had manes like fresh snow, and their blue eyes tracked the humans' movements with careful attention. In the higher branches, white leopards moved like ghosts, their spotted coats pure as winter clouds. "How is this possible?" Hana asked, pulling out her recording device before remembering where she was. "Earth makes them," Inho said simply. "Every time humans suffer greatly, every time we experience loss that touches our entire species, the planet responds. These creatures are born from our collective grief." Minho gestured toward the white cats. "We have records going back over 1,000 years. After the Black Death killed millions in Europe, white wolves appeared in the forests. After the world wars, white bears were found in remote areas. After the nuclear bombs fell on Japan, white cats began appearing all over Asia. But that's impossible," Jiwan protested. "Planets don't just create life forms." "Earth is not just any planet," a new voice said behind them. They turned to see an elderly woman approaching. She moved slowly but with dignity, her gray hair tied back in a simple style. Her eyes held depths of knowledge that made Jiwan feel young and naive. "This is Dr. Yuna Seo," Minho explained. "She has been studying this phenomenon longer than anyone. The relationship between Earth and humanity is deeper than most people understand," Dr. Seo continued. "We are not just living on this planet. We are connected to it in ways that science is only beginning to explain." She led them to an observation platform where they could look down at the entire dome. More white creatures were visible now. Panthers, jaguars, even what looked like massive white house cats, all moving with the same supernatural grace. The greater the human suffering, the more powerful these creatures become, Dr. Seo explained. And the massacre at New Busan was one of the worst attacks on civilians in human history. As if responding to her words, a roar echoed through the dome. All the humans turned to see the largest creature they had encountered yet. A white tiger, the size of a small truck, emerged from behind a waterfall. Its blue eyes seemed to glow with inner fire, and when it looked at Jiwan, the captain felt a strange connection. "We call him Baiko," Inho said quietly. "He appeared 3 days after news of New Busan reached Earth. He seems to be their leader." The massive tiger approached the observation platform with slow, deliberate steps. When it reached the base of the structure, it sat back on its haunches and continued staring at Jiwan. The captain felt drawn to climb down and meet the creature face to face. "Is it safe?" he asked. "They have never harmed a human," Dr. Seo replied. "They seem to understand that we are what they exist to protect." Jiwan descended the stairs slowly. When he reached ground level, Baiko stood and walked toward him. The tiger was even more impressive up close. Its white fur seemed to shimmer with its own light, and its blue eyes held intelligence that was almost human. When they were only a few feet apart, Baiko lay down and placed his massive head on the ground in front of Jiwan's feet. The captain knelt and carefully placed his hand on the tiger's forehead. The fur was incredibly soft, but he could feel the tremendous power in the muscles beneath. "He recognizes you," Dr. Seo called from above. "You carry the grief of New Busan. He can sense it." As Jiwan stroked the great cat's head, he felt something he had not experienced since the attack. Hope. These creatures represented something beyond normal understanding. They were Earth's answer to human pain, proof that the planet itself cared about its children. "Why are you showing me this?" Jiwan asked, still touching Baiko's warm fur. "Because the Kethran Empire is not finished with humanity," Minho replied, grimly. "Our intelligence suggests they are planning a full invasion of Earth. They think we are weak because we cry." Dr. Seo smiled, but it was not a kind expression. "They are about to learn why one should never make Earth's children weep." Around them, dozens of blue eyes watched and waited. The news broadcast began 3 days after Captain Jiwan Kim returned from Facility 7. Reports flooded in from around the world, all describing the same impossible phenomenon. White cats were appearing everywhere. In the streets of Seoul, families found white kittens on their doorsteps. In the mountains of Nepal, white snow leopards walked openly in daylight, unafraid of humans. In the Amazon rainforest, white jaguars emerged from the depths of the jungle. All of them had the same piercing blue eyes, and all of them seemed to be searching for something. Hana Lee sat in the communications center at Facility 7, monitoring reports from around the globe. Her screens showed dozens of video feeds from news stations, military bases, and civilian observers. Each new report made her heart beat faster. "Dr. Park, you need to see this," she called across the room. Minho hurried over and looked at her main screen. It showed aerial footage from above. New York City. Hundreds of white cats of all sizes were gathering in Central Park. They sat in perfect rows, all facing the same direction, as if waiting for orders. "This is happening in every major city," Hana reported. "London, Tokyo, Moscow, Sydney, everywhere. Humans live, these cats are appearing and gathering together." Dr. Inho Choi joined them at the monitoring station. His face was pale with worry. "The ones in our facility are responding too. They barely sleep anymore, they just pace and watch the sky." Through the observation windows, they could see the white cats in the dome moving with obvious agitation. Beko, the massive white tiger, stood at the highest point of an artificial rock formation, his blue eyes fixed on something beyond the transparent walls. "Where is Captain Kim?" Minho asked. "Training Ground 3, Inho replied. "He has been working with the cats for 12 hours straight." They found Jiwon in a large enclosed area, where several of the smaller white cats were moving through what looked like military exercises. The cats worked together with coordination that would make human soldiers jealous. They communicated through subtle body language and seemed to understand complex tactical concepts. Jiwon himself looked different than he had a week ago. His movements were more confident, more focused. When he gave hand signals, the cats responded immediately. It was clear that some kind of bond had formed between them. "Captain," Minho called out. "We need to talk." Jiwon dismissed the cats with a gesture and walked over to the group. "Have you seen the global reports?" "That's what we wanted to discuss," Hana replied. "These appearances are not random. The cats are positioning themselves near population centers and military installations. They're preparing for something," Dr. Yuna Seo said as she joined the group. The elderly scientist looked tired, but determined. "Our satellite feeds show Kethran ships massing at the edge of the solar system." "How many ships?" Jiwon asked. "More than 1,000, Dr. Seo replied grimly. "The largest invasion force ever assembled by their empire. They mean to make an example of Earth." A deep roar echoed through the facility. Everyone turned to see Beko approaching their group. The massive, white tiger moved with obvious urgency, his blue eyes bright with intelligence and purpose. "He knows," Jiwon said quietly. "They all know. The cats can sense what's coming." Dr. Seo pulled up a holographic display showing Earth from space. Red dots marked the locations where white cats had been sighted. The pattern was too organized to be coincidence. "They're positioning themselves for defense," she explained. "Look at these locations. Major ports, airports, government buildings, population centers. It's like they have access to our strategic planning databases. Or they understand strategy better than we thought," Inho added. Beko walked up to Jiwon and gently bumped the man's shoulder with his massive head. When the captain looked into the tiger's blue eyes, he felt a strange sensation, as if information was flowing directly into his mind. Images flashed through his thoughts. Ships falling from the sky in flames. Alien soldiers running in terror through city streets. And over it all, the sound of roaring cats, their voices joined in a song of vengeance. "They're not just preparing to defend," Jiwon said slowly. "They're preparing to hunt." As if to confirm his words, reports began coming in of the cats' behavior changing. The white cats that had been sitting peacefully in parks and public squares were now moving. They flowed through cities like water, taking positions on rooftops and subway tunnels in the shadows of tall buildings. "The military is asking for orders," Hana reported, reading messages on her communication device. "They want to know if they should try to contain or control the cats." "Tell them no," Dr. Seo said firmly. "These creatures are not under human control, and trying to cage them would be a mistake. They are here to help us, whether we understand their methods or not." Outside the facility, the sound of aircraft engines filled the air. Through the windows, they could see military helicopters and transport planes heading toward the major cities. Earth's conventional forces were mobilizing for the coming battle. But inside the dome, something far older and more primal was stirring. The white cats had stopped their restless pacing. Now they sat in complete stillness, their blue eyes turned skyward, as if they could see through the mountain and into space itself. "How long do we have?" Jiwan asked. Dr. Seo checked her instruments. "Kethrin ships will enter Earth's atmosphere in 18 hours. Bako rose to his feet and walked to the edge of the dome. He placed one massive paw against the transparent wall and roared. It was not the sound of an animal, but something deeper, older, filled with the accumulated grief and rage of every human who had ever suffered loss. Around the world, other white cats answered his call. From the streets of every city, from the depths of every forest, from the heights of every mountain, their voices rose in harmony. It was a sound that made hardened soldiers weep and caused alien monitoring stations to shut down their listening equipment in fear. "The awakening has begun," Dr. Seo whispered. Through the communication channels, reports flooded in of the cats moving with new purpose. They were no longer just positioning themselves defensively. They were taking active measures, disabling satellite dishes used by alien spies, surrounding buildings where collaborators might be hiding, and moving into positions that would allow them to strike swiftly when the time came. Jiwan felt Baiko's presence in his mind again, stronger this time. Images and emotions flowed between them, creating an understanding that went beyond words. The cats were not just Earth's defenders. They were Earth's memory, carrying within them the pain of every human who had ever been lost, and the determination to ensure that such losses would be avenged. "The Kethrins think they are coming to conquer a world of weak, crying humans," Jiwan said, his voice filled with quiet confidence. "They have no idea what they are really walking into." Above them, the first enemy scouts entered Earth's solar system, and across the planet, 10 million blue eyes opened in the darkness. The Kethrin invasion fleet darkened the sky above Earth like a plague of metal locusts. More than 1,000 ships of various sizes hung in the atmosphere, their black hulls gleaming with weapon ports and landing bays. The largest vessels were the size of cities, bristling with plasma cannons and particle beam arrays. General Krek stood on the command bridge of the flagship Devourer, his reptilian features twisted into what passed for a smile among his kind. Through the massive viewport, he could see the blue and green world spread out below him like a ripe fruit waiting to be picked. "Begin the bombardment," he hissed to his subordinates. "Target the major population centers first. I want to hear them scream before we land our troops." The first wave of plasma bolts lanced down from the fleet, aimed at cities across the globe. But as the deadly energy beams reached the atmosphere, something strange happened. They began to miss their targets, striking empty fields and uninhabited areas instead of the densely packed urban centers. "What is happening?" Krex demanded. "Why are our targeting systems malfunctioning?" His weapons officer, a younger Kethrin named Vex, frantically worked at his control panel. "Sir, the targeting computers are functioning normally, but something is interfering with our sensors. We cannot get accurate readings on the human settlements. On the surface of Earth, the answer to their confusion prowled through every street and alleyway. White cats of all sizes had positioned themselves around critical infrastructure and population centers. But these were not the normal cats that had appeared over the past weeks. These creatures seemed to bend light around themselves, creating confusion in the alien targeting systems. In New York City, Bieko stood atop the Empire State Building, his massive form somehow invisible to the Kethrin sensors above. Around him, hundreds of smaller white cats took positions on every rooftop, in every shadow, behind every corner. Their blue eyes reflected the fire falling from the sky, but they showed no fear. Captain Jiwon Kim crouched beside Bako, wearing military combat gear but feeling more connected to the great white tiger than to any human weapon. Through their strange bond, he could sense the locations of every other white cat across the planet. They formed a network of intelligence and coordination that no military force had ever achieved. "They're starting to land," Hana Lee reported through his radio. She was stationed at Facility 7, monitoring the global situation. "Dropships are deploying from the main fleet." Thousands of Kethran transport vessels descended toward major cities around the world. Each ship carried 50 reptilian soldiers armed with advanced energy weapons and combat armor. They expected to face frightened human civilians, and perhaps some organized military resistance. Instead, they landed in cities that seemed almost empty. Streets that should have been packed with panicking people were eerily quiet. Buildings that should have been lit up with activity stood dark and silent. The first Kethran soldiers to exit their ships in London found themselves in Trafalgar Square, surrounded by monuments and fountains, but no signs of human life. Their squad leader, Sergeant Zack, gestured for his troops to spread out and search the area. "Where are all the humans?" one soldier asked, his weapon scanning the empty streets. That was when the white cats struck. They came from everywhere at once. From storm drains and subway tunnels, from rooftops and fire escapes, from shadows that seemed too small to hide anything larger than a house cat. But these were not house cats. White tigers, lions, leopards, and jaguars flowed into the square like a tide of pale death. The Kethran soldiers opened fire, their energy weapons sending bright beams cutting through the air. But the white cats moved like ghosts, seeming to know exactly where each shot would go before it was fired. They dodged and weaved between the deadly beams, closing the distance with impossible speed. Sergeant Zack barely had time to scream before a white lion the size of a small car knocked him to the ground. The creature's blue eyes stared into his, yellow ones for a moment, and in that instant, Zack felt every moment of grief and loss that had created this supernatural hunter. Then powerful jaws closed around his throat. Similar scenes played out in every city where the Kethrans had landed. Their advanced technology and superior firepower meant nothing against enemies that seemed to exist partially outside normal space and time. The white cats hunted with intelligence that surpassed any military strategist, coordinating attacks across vast distances with perfect timing. In Tokyo, a squad of Kethran troops found themselves surrounded in Shibuya Crossing by what looked like hundreds of white house cats. The soldiers laughed at first, thinking these small creatures posed no threat. They stopped laughing when the cats began to grow, their forms expanding until each one was the size of a panther, their blue eyes blazing with supernatural fire. "Fall back to the ships," came the panicked radio calls from Kethran units around the globe. "We need immediate extraction." But many of the drop ships were already gone, their crews taken by cats that had somehow infiltrated the supposedly secure landing zones. Other vessels found their engines sabotaged by creatures that moved through metal and electronics as easily as they moved through shadows. General Krex watched the disaster unfold from his command ship, his reptilian face pale with shock and fear. Battle reports flooded in from every landing site, all telling the same impossible story. His superior military force was being systematically destroyed by creatures that should not exist. "Sir," his communications officer reported, his voice shaking. "We are receiving a transmission from the planet's surface. It appears to be from the human military." "Put it on screen," Krex hissed. The image that appeared showed Captain Ji-won Kim standing on a rooftop in New York City. Behind him, Baeko sat like a pale mountain, his blue eyes fixed on the camera. Around them, dozens of other white cats were visible, all staring upward with the same predatory intensity. "General Krex," Ji-won said, his voice calm and steady. "I am Captain Kim of the Earth Defense Force. You may remember me from the Galactic Council, where your allies mocked my tears." Krex's forked tongue flicked out nervously. "Human, you will surrender immediately, or we will glass your entire planet." Ji-won smiled, but it was not a pleasant expression. "You can try. But first let me explain something about those tears you found so amusing. Every time a human cries, Earth remembers. Every time we suffer loss, our world keeps count. And today, Earth is collecting what you owe." As if responding to his words, roars echoed from cities around the globe. The sound was picked up by the Kethran ship's sensors, a harmony of rage and grief that had been building for centuries, finally given voice. "Your invasion force is already broken," Ji-won continued. "Half your ships are destroyed or disabled. Your ground troops are dead or running. But we are not finished with you yet. Behind him, Beko rose to his feet and walked to the edge of the rooftop. The massive white tiger looked up at the alien fleet with eyes that burned like blue stars. You wanted to make humans scream, Jiwan said. Instead, you have made us remember why Earth breeds predators from our pain. The transmission ended, leaving General Krex staring at a blank screen while the sounds of his dying army filled the command bridge. The battle for Earth lasted only 6 hours, but the galaxy would remember it for centuries. By the time the sun set over New York City, the massive Kethran invasion fleet was nothing more than scattered debris floating in Earth's orbit. Some ships had been destroyed by weapons that seemed to strike from impossible angles. Others had simply gone dark, their crews found later with expressions of absolute terror frozen on their faces. General Krex's flagship, the Devourer, hung crippled in high orbit, its engines dead and its weapon systems offline. The reptilian commander sat in his command chair, staring at reports that made no sense. His invasion force of over 1 million soldiers had been reduced to less than 10,000 survivors in a matter of hours. How? He whispered to himself. How did they do this? His answer came in the form of white shadows that began materializing on his bridge. The Kethran guards raised their weapons, but the energy beams passed harmlessly through the pale forms. Then the shadows solidified, revealing white cats of various sizes, all with those same burning blue eyes. At their head walked the largest predator Krex had ever seen. Beko moved across the metal deck with fluid grace, his massive paws making no sound. Behind him came Captain Jiwan Kim, somehow having reached the ship without using any visible means of transportation. Impossible, Krex hissed. You cannot be here. This ship is in space. Humans cannot survive in vacuum. Jiwan smiled and placed his hand on Beko's flank. You still do not understand, do you? These creatures are not bound by the same laws that limit other life forms. They are Earth's will made manifest, and Earth's will extends as far as it needs to. The white cat spread out across the bridge, surrounding the surviving Kethran crew members. None of the aliens dared to move. Something in those blue eyes spoke of judgment that went beyond mere animal instinct. Your fleet is destroyed, Jiwan continued. Your ground forces are defeated. Most of your soldiers are dead. The few survivors are being held in facilities around the globe, where they will face trial for war crimes. Krex's yellow eyes darted around the bridge, looking for an escape route that did not exist. The Galactic Council will hear of this. They will not allow Earth to possess such weapons. Weapons? Jiwan laughed, but the sound held no humor. These are not weapons, General. These are Earth's children born from the tears you found so amusing. Every human who has ever mourned, every loss we have ever suffered, every moment of grief that your species and others like it have caused us. All of it is remembered here. Beko padded closer to Krex's command chair. The massive white tiger studied the reptilian general with eyes that seemed to look directly into his soul. When their gazes met, Krex felt something he had never experienced before. He felt the weight of every life his actions had destroyed, every family torn apart by his orders, every child who had cried for parents who would never come home. You feel it now, do not you? Jiwan asked quietly. The grief you have caused, the pain you have spread across the galaxy. Earth keeps count of all of it. And today you learned what happens when the bill comes due. Around the bridge, other white cats were approaching the surviving Kethran crew members. But instead of attacking, they simply sat down and stared. Under that burning blue gaze, each alien soldier began to feel the emotional weight of their actions. Some fell to their knees, overwhelmed by sudden understanding of the suffering they had caused. We offer you a choice, Jiwan said to Krex. You can return to your empire and tell them what you learned here. Tell them that Earth is under the protection of forces they cannot comprehend. Tell them that humans may cry, but our tears water the soil that grows our guardians. And if we refuse? Krex managed to ask. Beko's lips pulled back, revealing teeth like white daggers. The message was clear without words. Take your survivors and go, Jiwan ordered. You have one ship left that is still spaceworthy. Load your people and leave our system. If any Kethran vessel ever enters Earth space again, if any member of your species ever raises a weapon against a human colony, these guardians will find you no matter how far you run. 6 months later, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session. Representatives from across the galaxy had gathered to discuss the reports coming out of the Kethran Empire. Stories of ghost ships arriving at alien worlds, crewed by traumatized survivors who spoke of white shadows and blue eyes that burned with accumulated sorrow. Ambassador Slicks of the Vorthak delegation shifted nervously in his seat as Captain Ji-Won Kim entered the Great Hall. This time the human was not alone. Beko walked beside him, the massive white tiger's presence causing a ripple of fear through the assembled aliens. "Honored delegates," Ji-Won said, his voice carrying clearly through the suddenly quiet chamber. "I have returned to discuss Earth's application for full membership in the Galactic Council." The same aliens who had mocked his tears months earlier now sat in respectful silence. Word of the Kethran defeat had spread throughout known space, along with descriptions of the supernatural guardians that protected humanity. "The floor recognizes Earth's representative," the council speaker announced, her multiple arms trembling slightly. Ji-Won walked to the center podium, Beko at his side. Around the gallery, other humans were visible, including Dr. Minho Park, researcher Hana Lee, and Dr. Yuna Seo. But scattered among them were other white cats, their blue eyes reflecting the artificial starlight. "6 months ago, you laughed at human tears," Ji-Won began. "You called us weak because we show emotion. You denied us aid when we begged for help against aggressors." He paused, looking around at the hundreds of alien faces watching him with new respect and poorly concealed fear. "Today I stand before you not to ask for your help, but to offer ours. Earth extends friendship to those who understand that strength comes in many forms. We offer protection to those who are threatened by forces beyond their ability to resist. We offer alliance to those who believe that caring for others is not weakness, but the highest form of courage." A delegate from the peaceful Athari Federation raised one of her crystalline appendages. "What of those who still view human emotion as problematic?" Beko turned his massive head to look at the speaker. His blue eyes held depths of patience and understanding, but also unmistakable warning. "They are free to hold that opinion," Ji-Won replied, "but they should remember that Earth has a long memory, and our world does not forget those who mock the tears of her children." The vote for Earth's full membership in the Galactic Council was unanimous. Later, as the various delegations prepared to return to their homeworlds, Ambassador Slicks approached Captain Kim in one of the station's quieter corridors. The reptilian alien moved carefully, obviously aware of the white cats that seemed to materialize from shadows whenever Ji-Won went. "Captain," Slicks said, his voice much more respectful than it had been during their first meeting. That is, the Vorthak delegation wishes to express our regret for our previous behavior." Ji-Won studied the alien's face, seeing genuine fear mixed with what might have been the beginning of understanding. "Apology accepted, Ambassador," Ji-Won replied. "But remember this moment. Remember that what you called weakness was actually our greatest strength. We cry because we love. We mourn because life has meaning to us. And because we feel so deeply, our world itself rises to defend us." As the human delegation prepared to depart, Dr. Minho Park made a final log entry in Earth's diplomatic records. "The IT galaxy now understands that humanity's capacity for emotion is not a flaw to be mocked, but a power to be respected. They have learned that our tears are not signs of weakness, but seeds from which Earth grows guardians. And they have discovered that those who would harm Earth's children must answer not just to us, but to the accumulated grief and love of our entire species, given form and purpose. Perhaps most importantly, they now know that in a universe full of predators, Earth breeds the ultimate hunters from the very thing that makes us most human, our ability to care, to mourn, and to remember." The white cats of Earth settled back into their hidden sanctuaries, but their blue eyes remained watchful. Across the galaxy, the word spread quickly among those who would threaten humanity. Never make Earth's children cry. The planet is listening, and it keeps count of every tear.